Okay, hello everybody. This is Ryan Peterson, and I'm here today to talk with a special guest about the top three things you should be focused on right now as a business owner. My guest is Bruce Willey of the American Tax and Business Planning in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And full disclosure, Bruce is actually my CPA, and I've been working with him for many years. He works with clients, business owners all over the country. And he just wrote an article that was published in Kiplinger, which is a trade publication for those of you that aren't knowledgeable about that. Great article. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I think it'd be great if you could speak to fellow business owners about the things that they should be focused on right now. So Bruce, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it on the top three things. Number one, I think, should be that today is tax day in America, or what traditionally was tax day, being April 15th. And it's like none that I've ever seen in the past. So tell me about how this is different than what you've seen in your experience.
Well, I've been doing tax return work since 1985, and let's just say I'm at home and I have no tax returns in front of me. And on a normal day like today, I would have probably been in the office about 3:30, 4 in the morning. And I would probably go home about 11 o'clock at night, checking our lists and making sure extensions have been filed, the returns that went out were accurate. And there's none of that today. My staff hasn't worked overtime in 2 weeks. And we're kind of at a nice little friendly pace, I guess, in the tax world. So
you've never been able to watch Netflix, The Tiger King, when you've been on tax day in the past, I'm sure.
Never.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going to watch it tonight, but my wife and son are enjoying it immensely, and I'm hearing a lot of the back jokes. So it's It's certainly got the America's attention right now.
That's right. So tell me what is going to happen now for the delay in filing and what it means for people with their personal returns and their corporate returns.
So there's really a couple of different categories, but for people and businesses that had an April 15th deadline, which would be all individuals, and then C corporations that have a 12/31 year end, those returns have been, the technical term by the IRS is postponed until July 15th. They do not have to file the returns, and they do not need to file an extension until July 15th. Now, there's a few categories that did not get extended. So for instance, I have some clients that have some foreign bank accounts, either because they were passed down through the family or they had some investments overseas or something like that. The FinCEN reporting requirements were not extended automatically or as part of the postponement bill to July 15th. So for those people, we've been filing extensions to make sure we get the FinCEN date extended. There hasn't been any real guidance on that. So out of an abundance of caution for those taxpayers that have those type of accounts and have to make those disclosures, we filed an extension. But the date is postponed until July 15th. You don't have to file your return by July 15th. You can file an extension July 15th. For individuals, that would push you to October 15th due date. For the companies, for flow-through entities, it's September 15th, but your C Corp would get the date until October as well. So you don't have to file an extension until July 15th at this point. And if you want to extend, then you can, and then it's just the normal dates that you would have in a normal filing year, which would be September 15th or October 15th, just depending on the type of entity that you are.
Okay, so it's good that we're actually getting a little relief on that. What about in terms of paying the taxes? So right now, a lot of businesses are really struggling. They are having trouble making their lease or mortgage payments, or even making payroll for their staff if they haven't laid everybody off. What if they can't pay their taxes? What happens?
Well, so there's, again, the postponement had two phases to it. So if you can't pay your tax, I mean, if you have the money to pay your taxes, you can hold on to it till July 15th, and you can pay them on or before July 15th without penalty or interest for being late. So they've waived the late filing and the interest charges for you not paying by April 15th, and you can pay till July 15th, and there won't be any penalty or interest accruing to that payment. So if you have a large tax bill and you've got the money set aside to pay for it, you're in good shape because you just saved penalty and interest on that money. If you're in a position where you can't file, or you can't pay your taxes, we still always recommend that you file your return on time, because there's separate penalties involved with filing. If you file a late return, it's an expensive penalty. So avoid that penalty, file your return. In a normal year, I would tell you, you file your return. If you can't pay, that doesn't matter. Send the return in anyway. You're going to get a notice in 6-8 weeks in a normal year. This year, 12, 15, 16 weeks. I don't really know. IRS is on furlough right now, and the resources that practitioners like myself typically have, we have a special number that we can call to get through to the IRS faster and things like that. They're all shut down. So we have no access to anybody in the IRS right now, except in an emergency situation. We have a bat phone that we can use. It's an email address, but we can get immediate urgent things resolved. But other than that, there's been no access to the IRS for a couple of weeks now. And most of their offices are basically on a skeleton crew.
Okay. That's good to know. So, in talking about money, if you don't have the money, let's go on to the issue number 2, or the item number 2 that we should all know about. Talk about PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and kind of what the results have been so far, who's having some success. What do you know?
Well, it's a brand new program that's been in existence for 10 days, and they've asked an SBA infrastructure of about 5,000 employees to administer it. So it has not gone as smoothly as everybody would hope, but it's also amazing that in 10 days, they've kind of produced an infrastructure that's beginning to pay out money under the program. Right now, there's been over 1 million loan applications that have been approved. They've approved $247 billion of loans. The whole program was originally funded for about $350 billion. So they're 2/3 through the money after April 5th was the first day you could file an application. So 10 days, they're through 2/3 of the money.
So does 2/3 of the money mean that 2/3 of the money has actually been received by people?
That would be nice, but no.
Okay.
It's been spoken for. What we're finding out is that the law requires the banks to disperse funds within 10 days of acceptance of the application by the SBA. And we're finding anecdotally that the banks are sitting on money. I'm somebody that had filed an application April 5th. It was approved April 7th. And I just received word from my banker that they got 10 days to hold the money. So about April 17th, I can sign paperwork, and then they'll drop the money in my account after the paperwork's signed. And of course, most of the banks, the lobbies are closed, so they're going to be doing electronic paperwork, but they need a signed original in this case. So I'll have to use a Dropbox or something to get it done. But it looks like the banks are holding the money and taking advantage of the overnight rates and making a little bit of money off of the money, because there's no other reason. If you have the money to hold it for 10 days in an emergency situation like that, they should be getting it to small business owners, but I don't think that's happening quite as efficiently.
So some banks potentially are just getting 10 days of float interest when they could be getting it to their clients.
Yeah, I mean, the PPP program locked the interest rate at 1%. So the bank literally is going to make nothing on it. They are entitled to a fee on top of that, but yeah, they're making money in the overnight rates right now. And, they can make 2 or 3% overnight, and that's what they're doing. And, it seems to me from just what I'm hearing, I'm in a market where we got a Wells Fargo, we got US Bank. I work with a regional bank, and it seems like the regional banks are moving a little bit faster at this. I know some of the Wells Fargos, the Chases, Bank of Americas were having trouble with their websites, taking the applications, doing that sort of thing. So what the statistics available to us say that right now 4.3% of the money has actually been released into the marketplace. But I would expect
Okay.
that by the weekend, that'll be up to 25, maybe 30% is the hope, because the 10-day period is going to start running and they've got to start dispersing funds.
Yeah, and more importantly, people need the money desperately right now. You said that earlier today when I was talking to you, you said that there was some overnight legislation that dropped specifically for sole proprietors. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. They broke the PPP program into two parts. The first one was businesses with payroll. They could start filing applications for the loans on April 3rd, I believe. The law also allowed independent contractors and sole proprietors to file for those loans starting April 10th. We expected guidance on the paperwork that was going to be required for the independent contractor sole proprietor program last week. We didn't get it last week. We got it last night. It dropped about 6 o'clock Eastern time. And basically what it says for independent contractor sole proprietors is you have to have your draft 2019 Schedule C done. So if you're somebody that typically doesn't get your tax return done till October, you are going to have your tax preparer complete a draft Schedule C showing what your profit is. Okay, and then you take the profit for the year, divide it by 12, multiply it by 2.5. That tells you how much money you can borrow. If you borrow that amount, you then have 8 weeks to spend that money on payroll, rent, mortgage interest only, not the principal, for your building if you own it, and then utilities. Now, the really weird twist about the sole proprietor independent contractor thing is that the attraction of the PPP program is that the loan is forgiven, right? If you spend it on those topics or those categories in that 8-week period, your loan is forgiven and it's not taxable income to you. For the independent contractor sole proprietor, what they've come down with is that your forgiveness is equal to 8 weeks of your profit. So you're going to, if you're a sole proprietor with very few other expenses, you have to consider really hard whether you want to take the full amount you're entitled to or limit it to that 8 weeks of profit, the forgiven part, because otherwise you're going to be paying some loan back. I had a conversation with a client of mine this morning who runs a business, and doesn't have very many expenses at all on his Schedule C. He just happens to make money, with podcasts and things like that. And we had the conversation, look, you're eligible to borrow, $6,500, but you're only going to be able to forgive $4,600 of it, for instance. So there's a $1,900 gap between the 2.5 times the average monthly salary versus the 8 weeks of average profit. And so people are going to have to kind of make that decision. But it also had some guidance for K-1 people and those that receive their income on K-1s. And unless it's self-employed income, you're not going to be eligible for the PPP program for that income. And partnerships that do guaranteed payments have to file at the partnership level. Each partner cannot file separately. The partnership level has to do it. And that's guidance we've been waiting for 2 weeks. So I imagine that in the next 2 days, the banks are going to get another flood of applications from independent contractors, sole proprietors.
Yeah, and it sounds fairly complicated. So of course, I'd recommend that anyone that needs help filling that out, talk to their CPA or reach out to you if they don't have one that they're working with. And it seems too that even worst case scenario, if this isn't forgivable, the great news is it's only a 1% rate. So that's really better than free money when you factor in inflation if you just need something to keep yourself
and it's
for a while.
repayable over a 2-year period, so it's not going to strangle anybody. I want to point out one thing to you, Ryan, and this is something that we're strongly recommending to people that have applied for the PPP program or that they are going to. When it comes to the forgiveness, I am highly recommending that you put that money in a separate bank account and only pay the bills that are eligible for forgiveness out of that account, because it's going to make it so much easier when you apply for forgiveness. So that's a 2-step process. You had to apply for the loan, but then after the 8-week period, sometime in the fall, they're going to start taking applications for forgiveness. And that's where I think you need to have as simple and clean a paper trail as you possibly can, that we used it on payroll, and the payroll cost has to be 75% of the money over an 8-week period. Then you have rent, utilities, the mortgage interest. Pay those items out of that bank account, and that's it. Don't put any money in it. And, you know, if there's leftover money, there's leftover money, and we'll have to deal with that, that maybe that part isn't forgiven. But I think it'll make people's lives a lot easier if they have a separate bank account and they don't have commingled funds. I don't even want to imagine what it would be like to have commingled funds and try and trace payroll and stuff back to certain payments. I just think it's so much cleaner to have a separate bank account. So I've already opened a separate bank account.
That's a really good tip. I was just making a note for myself as well. So thank you for that. Okay, number 3, let's talk about, for people that are feeling especially strained financially, there are some new limits to withdrawals or loans from IRAs and 401ks. So talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, they've been really generous with your with an ability to tap your retirement savings if you need to, if you've been adversely affected by the current circumstance, and very few of us haven't. But it's a generous provision, and what it basically says is that you can take up to $100,000 out of your retirement accounts, and you can make a choice. You can either repay that money over 3 years, or you can defer the taxation of those monies over 3 years. And the 10% penalty for early withdrawal for those of us that are less than 59 and a half are waived. So you can use the money now, and you can either repay it from resources over the next 3 years so that you put your retirement savings, you know, back in, or you can pay the taxes on it over a 3-year period as well, and not repay your retirement savings. And, you know, I'm sure you probably recommend to your clients that's a last resort, because it's expensive money and it's money earmarked for another purpose. But if there's desperation and you need the money and that asset's available to you, then there's some generous ways to do it. The 401k loan provisions were changed to allow up to 100% of an account balance to be borrowed instead of 50%. But you have to make sure that your 401k has a loan provision in order to take advantage of that. So,
and do you know on that specifically, Bruce, if the plan document said that the loan was up to 50,000 or 50%, does the plan actually have to be amended with the administrator, or is it just kind of waived? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't believe the administrator is going to have to file an amendment to the plan for a change in federal law.
Okay.
They might do it later to cover everybody's, you know, backsides, but, you know, it's clear that that's what the intent of the law was to allow, you know, larger loans and up to 100% of the balance. And so, you know, that'd be one of those paperwork things that I think works itself out over time. And most administrators, as cautious as they are about their plan documents, I imagine will probably push out amendments just to match the law. But but for now, I think, you know, with the suddenness of all these changes, again, this is one of those 10-day provisions. It's been in existence for 10 days, and here we are enacting it, and people are having to, you know, react to it and issue things, and it's all pretty sudden. So I imagine, you know, my guess is most administrators will probably end up amending, even if they don't have to, just out of an abundance of caution.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, so those are the top 3 things that every business owner should know. And I wanted to throw in some bonus question to you as well. And that is, business owners right now probably have some idle downtime. And instead of just watching Netflix, like we joked about earlier, what should you be doing to make your business better right now, so that when things start to pick up, you can get back on track with a better business than you had before?
You know, I've been having this conversation a lot. I've been on the phone nonstop with clients about, you know, what do we do? And really, you know, there's some things that need to be done. And the regulations that came out last night for independent contractors, sole proprietors, verify this. This is the time to get your accounting and your bookkeeping up to date, and stop this stuff where at the end of the year, you're having to kill yourself to get it done. Stay on top of it, get it done. You need to know your numbers. You need to be able to share your numbers to take advantage of some of these programs. You're going to have this data to take advantage of the forgiveness. So get your books and records caught up and start to run your business using your numbers more. and make decisions based on return on investment, and just be smarter about the way you run your business. Now, you know, we're having to adapt, and we're in a time of change. And as you know, I do a lot of tax planning for clients, and maybe this year is a year where we won't do as much tax planning simply because there'll be a lot of questions about how quickly we bounce back, and will people have, you know, large taxable incomes that they're worried about. And there'll be some industries where they absolutely will. But this is also the time to adapt. What skill set do you have that maybe you think could be a good product that could help people at this time, that would be necessary? How can you change your business to position itself for the rebound? You know, what can you do to adapt? My son works at a restaurant, and now they're doing delivery business in addition to their carry up window. And they're going to continue the delivery business when they come back online because they've had success with it. You know, so figure out a way to adapt. How can you improve what you do? And if you don't like what you're doing, how can you change it? I mean, this is like everybody's got a timeout, and you're sitting on the bench, and it's like, this is the time to be honest with yourself and to do what you really want to do, and structure your life and your business so that you can accomplish more of what you want to accomplish. There are going to be a ton of opportunities out there. And I know that we're bombarded constantly with negativity, and all this could go on for years. And, you know, and I don't know the answers to those questions, but I know that when we get going again, we are absolutely going to have a lot of opportunities presented to us. And the business that has adapted and survived and figured out how to make themselves necessary in this time are going to explode. And it's a real opportunity for some smaller people to get ahead of competitors and to out nimble your opponents. And I just really encourage your business owners, your entrepreneurs, that's the spirit they have anyway. Don't get down. Don't sit around and languish. This is the time to improve. This is the time to work. So get it done. Take advantage of this time and make great use of it.
That's great advice, Bruce. Thank you for taking the time today on this rare and unusual free time that you have on tax day. I know in the past, I don't think I've ever talked to you on tax day unless I have an urgent question that I need in time for filing. So I really appreciate it. And just, I popped up on the screen here for anyone that wanted to follow up and ask any questions of me. You can reach me at meetwithryanpeterson.com. And with Bruce, you can see his email here if you'd like to reach out and ask any specific questions of him from a tax standpoint or anything we talked about today on this web meeting. So Bruce, thanks again very much. And I'm sure you and I will be talking soon when the July timeframe comes up and we're talking about my own returns.
Absolutely, Ryan. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
Yep.